This podcast is part of the Podcast Arcade Network.
Welcome to episode 12 of Paranormal Dads. This is your co-host Andy.
I'm Eddie.
I'm Pat.
Join us as we go in search of the world's monsters, myths, and mysteries right here on Paranormal Dads. We're back. Baker's Dozen.
2018, man. First episode.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
So we got a Baker's Dozen. Is that 13 or 12?
13 is
That's
a Baker's Dozen.
So next episode will be our Baker's Dozen. This is a regular dozen.
If you're a number person, isn't 13 considered kind of like boogity boogity? A boogity boogity.
Superstition. Well, anyway, we're back with another episode, and we're as excited as ever. And as always, we kind of start each episode with recent sightings as a way to catch people up to speed about recent sightings of monsters, myths, mysteries, current events, odd anomalies throughout the country.
Yeah.
And we tend to rotate the segments, and up for this week's recent sightings is Pat. What'd you round up for us, Pat?
This is something that actually broke last month that we've been kind of laying low for a little while, but this is a story about UFOs and secret government programs and things of that nature. So that's what we're going to get into in recent sightings.
Ooh, here we go.
So last month, the New York Times and Politico ran stories about a super secret UFO program funded on black money to the tune of $22 million and being run from deep within the Pentagon. And including in the program studies are videos of encounters between UFOs and American military aircraft, one of which occurred in 2004 when two F-18 fighter jets from the Nimitz aircraft carrier encountered a white oval object about the size of a commercial airplane off the coast of San Diego. And these guys couldn't even keep up with this thing. They said it kind of looked like a giant Tic Tac.
A giant Tic Tac. Was that the official description from the experts?
It was. From the pilots actually used that description.
I could see the response. It's like, dude, everything's a Tic Tac to you. It's because your breath stinks.
And these are F-18s?
F-18s.
So what's the top speed for those? Like
Yeah.
1,000, over 1,000.
I mean, you're
well
in the
over
Mach,
1,000.
you're in the Mach 8s and stuff like that. I mean, like,
Well, I don't know if they go that fast because the SR-71 is like a Mach 3. I think.
there you go. I'm already making things up.
But these things can break the sound barrier.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, so
easily, yeah.
I'd say over 1,000 miles an hour,
Yeah.
probably, and they couldn't keep up with the Tic Tac.
And they couldn't keep up with the Tic Tac.
It's a fast Tic Tac.
So there's actually a YouTube video of these planes tracking it, and you can kind of see it through I don't know if it's their gun camera or whatever it is, but they have it on camera, and you can see their little targeting thing trying to keep up with this thing. And the pilots are just incredulous about what they're seeing, and you could just tell they're in awe of what they're looking at. So go out and search F-18 UFO encounter San Diego, Google that, and check out this video if you haven't seen it. It's pretty cool.
Wait, what flavor Tic Tac? Was this thing orange, or was it white, or was it...
I'm kind of partial to... It was a white Tic Tac.
It was a white one?
Yeah.
I like the orange ones.
Totally wintergreen.
Yeah, I'm more of a fruity kind of Tic Tac guy myself.
Yeah, those banana ones with little minions on the cover.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I want.
Those were a big hit in the grocery stores.
The thing that was kind of cool about this, I remember this because this showed up on like a ton of mainstream news.
Yeah, this hit the news
stuff
big time.
as well.
Yeah, it's actually about it's a program called it's known as the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program. That's a mouthful. It was started in 2007 by Senate Majority Leader of the time, Democrat Harry Reid, and two other former senators. One was an Alaska Republican named Ted Stevens, and Daniel, I'm going to butcher this, but Daniel Inouye, he was a Democrat from Hawaii. So these are three pretty big name senators that started this program. And much of the funding went to an aerospace research company called Bigelow Aerospace. It's run by a guy named Robert Bigelow. He's a friend of Reed's, and he's a billionaire entrepreneur.
You got this.
Billionaire entrepreneur.
That's a lot to say.
It doesn't roll off the tongue very easily.
So, but he's currently working with NASA to produce manned spacecraft systems, but he's also very interested in UFOs.
He has a lesser-known brother named Deuce, who is a gigolo.
But Bigelow actually has gone on 60 Minutes, gone on the record that says he is absolutely convinced that aliens exist and UFOs have visited Earth.
And this was on 60 Minutes?
Yeah.
Pretty legit program.
Right. Yeah. So, but this whole thing about, the black money and everything, it kind of brings to mind the quote from Independence Day, Judd Hirsch, he says, "You don't actually think they spend $20,000 on a hammer, do you? $30,000 on a toilet seat?"
No.
That's pretty good, Pat.
Well done.
That's good impersonation.
That's my Judd Hirsch.
It reminds me of the line also from Contact where they're like, you never build one of something when you could build two for twice the money. It's like,
yeah. Good point.
So yeah, once
Why
again,
build one when two is twice as nice?
Yeah, exactly.
These black projects, man, it's ridiculous, and it's like the government just shrugged its shoulders, just gives them a shoulder shrug. Oh, we don't got to tell you what we just spent $3 trillion on. It's none of your business.
Well, and once again, not that like what's the phrase? It's like causality doesn't equate to. I don't remember now. My brain's dying. but just because causality isn't correlation or something like that. But it's like just because they're funneling millions of dollars into this, does that all of a sudden mean that aliens are real? But it's like they wouldn't be doing that if there wasn't a credible threat either.
Yeah. And when you think about the budget of the Pentagon, $22 million is a drop in the bucket.
Oh, that's a sneeze. That's a chump change right there.
Right.
But still, you got a point. It's like they wouldn't be putting that much money into something if they didn't think it was real.
All right, you couldn't justify,
or there was a need for it.
Right. I mean, all of us in some level of either have had or currently work in some sort of corporate setup, and it's like for a fact these guys aren't spending money where they don't feel like they absolutely need to. So it's kind of funny to me that even still there's people who are like, yeah, it's probably just nothing.
But when this article came out, it went viral. Like, it was all over the internet.
It was on Good Morning America. It was on CNN. It was on all these major news outlets covered this story. And of course, everybody who like the anchors, they were always kind of tongue in cheek about it and kind of giggling about it. But CNN was giving, interview time to people to come on and talk about it.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like a reader that they were doing.
It's kind of frustrating, actually, when news reporters are kind of tongue in cheek and like they say what the teleprompter says, but they do it with a smile and an eye roll at the same time.
Right.
It's almost like they're trying to save face for themselves.
They are,
just in case other people scoff. They kind of want to come off as, oh, this isn't really my thing, but if you're into this kind of thing.
Well, they're still entertainment type people, so their thing is like, if we hang it out too high and say that we absolutely believe this, then we may have committed career suicide. So they're just like, we'll read this, but we're going to also play to the crowd that doesn't believe this at the same time.
But it's kind of amazing, some of the stuff that's coming out from government people associated with this program, what they're saying about it. They're saying things like what they're studying are displaying characteristics that are not currently within the U.S. inventory, nor any foreign inventory that they are aware of.
I love the...
AKA, these aircraft are doing maneuvers that are not humanly possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, the one head scratcher for this is why release this information now? Some people are saying, are they starting to soften us up a little bit for bigger
for
things
the big
to come?
reveal?
Of course, I'm a believer that it's really going to take somebody parking their huge spaceship right above a major city in the middle of the day where everybody can get a good selfie with it.
Exactly.
Or anybody's
Unequivocally,
gonna
just
believe it, right?
Because unless it's a mass sighting like that, you can try to say, even if a dozen people see something and get footage of it, you can kind of discredit it or push it to the side or come up with some ridiculous explanation. But if one hovers above Times Square for 48 hours and everybody on Earth it gets a good view of it, that's lights out. That'll be definitive proof right there. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, Pat. Like, what if gently, slowly throughout the years, the government and the media exposing people to more UFO sightings. Maybe it is a way of kind of softening the blow. Maybe they know without a shadow of a doubt that these things are real. Maybe they have evidence. Who knows? And maybe they're going to release that evidence someday once we've all had a little exposure. Almost like this is the appetizer.
Yeah, right.
And the main, they're just wetting our whistles for the main course kind of deal.
This here's the breadsticks.
Yeah, here's this breadsticks.
Tell me on CNN when they interviewed people, though, they didn't get the one guy. You know, the one guy with the one eyeball that looks off to the side. He got the tinfoil hat. I seen it. I seen it all.
I done seen it, showed my dog.
Didn't you, Sparky? Holds him up. The dog's wearing a foil hat, too.
He's blind, but he saw it. He sniffed it.
He's psychic. I listened to this all my career advice. I'm jobless. But, I mean, I love that they did give this a little bit more serious. CNN, not that I'm picking a favorite here, but it's neat to see a network handle it more professionally.
And the story itself came from the New York Times, so that's a big entity in itself.
Hardly a little like YouTube channel or anything,
Right.
Right.
Well, oh man, that's crazy.
Well, and the other thing is, it's cool that it's main news. It's cool it went viral on the internet, and you got 2020 and 60 Minutes and things like this covering the story. But then what? Then everyone goes back to work the next Monday, just like nothing ever happened, and we get on with our lives. And
right.
I guess what choice do we have? But still, at the same time, I wish they would dig a little deeper. I heard an interview with. It was a well-known UFO researcher, and this was back in the mid-90s when the whole Clinton and Monica Lewinsky thing was really hot, and they were talking about if people and the government and researchers invested as much time and energy into the UFO phenomena as they did the Monica Lewinsky case, we would already have definitive proof of UFO evidence.
It's so funny,
yeah. I think some people don't want to know or don't want to acknowledge it.
Right.
And I hear what you're saying, because one of the interviews that I saw, they were talking about, well, it's nice to have something kind of different to talk about in the news, rather than all the dark, bleak stuff we always talk about day to day. So it's just kind of a side note for these guys, and then it gets pushed aside, and later on, something else comes out, and it just. It's a cycle that they go through.
Oh, totally. Our ability as humans to acclimate and adjust is almost astounding. Like, I think we talked about this before. Like, even if there was a gigantic spaceship that blotted out the sun that was parked over New York City, within a week we'd be used to it.
Yeah.
We'd be like, oh, there it is.
Yeah,
there it is. It's got a bunch of aliens on it, and it's just
kind of like the TV show V. That's what they ended up doing.
Yeah, Alien Nation. That's one of my favorites. Yeah. But yeah, our ability to kind of get used to something, even completely weird, is kind of astounding to me. Like, yeah, that's what it is now. They found a fish has a dinosaur face. All right, well, I got a bill due. So yeah, it's crazy. Wow. Aliens
and governments.
Good recent sighting, Pat. Thanks.
They are among us.
It's time for pop, culture, and the paranormal.
It's my turn. Pop culture and the paranormal.
What are we talking about?
Today we're talking about one of my favorite topics. And it involves a little thing called 1.21 gigawatts. It's time travel. Time travel in cinema, in the film. And yeah, one of my favorite subjects.
That's it's funny you say that, because last night my wife and I were joking around saying 1.21 gigawatts. We went down to the auto show downtown.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
And they had a DeLorean with the
gull wing doors.
With the what do you call them? The
gull wing.
Sideways
is that what they call them?
Yeah, like seagull wings.
Super cool wings.
Oh, that's such an iconic.
Did you get to sit in it?
I didn't get to sit in it because it was roped off in the special section. But it's kind of neat to look at though, because I'm not even sure if it was a paint color. It was like brushed nickel.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
they
like
don't have
stainless
paint.
Steel.
Yeah, so there's literally no paint on it.
Yeah,
So
all
I was right.
DeLoreans, have painless. Man, I can't talk.
Painless steel.
Painless steel. You can punch it all day; it won't hurt. But yeah, so the thing about one of my favorite subjects is science fiction in general, and classic mainstay of science fiction is time travel. And I've joked before, you couldn't tell a Star Trek story without having time travel. These people just can't seem to keep away from it. But some of the most iconic films and stuff that, you can just say 1.21 gigawatts, and people automatically like clue in or whatever. But the idea of time travel, especially in film, I think translates to a lot of different folks, even if they're not, quote unquote nerds, they still like that kind of stuff. So
Absolutely.
I kind of wanted to talk about time travel in film. Starting with, and actually I'm not going to go dive into the Back to the Future, with the time machine. There was 2 versions of this film, but I'm thinking about the one that was in I want to say it was in the mid-late 60s, and it was based on Jules Verne's novel, The Time Machine. And just a cool story about a man trying to basically use his invention to fix what he perceived as a thing that never should have happened. I believe it was his fiancée had gotten killed, and so he was trying to find a way to go back and stop it. And he soon realized he couldn't do it.
We've got to go back.
Exactly, back to the future. But he couldn't do it, and so these what I like about time travel stories is it really brings to the forefront these philosophical discussions about like destiny versus choice and all those things. And so like in this case, there's almost this play at destiny, because he couldn't stop her from dying.
Like it was inevitable, basically.
Right. Like no matter what he did, she kept dying. And so he was like, in his grief, he's like, I can't handle it. I'm going to go forward. And he went like eons into the future, only to see that like, humanity had like devolved, which is starting to feel like a normal.
Starting to feel like a real possibility here.
Looking at you, Tide Pods.
Yeah, no doubt.
But humanity had ended up like devolving, and so where they became kind of like prey for this other version of humanoid that preyed on them. And it's just a neat story in the sense of like this man found purpose again and was able to realize that, for him, at least I think the concurrent theme in that story was there is kind of a persistent destiny on some level, and you might have micro control over certain things, but some things just have to happen. So I think, and if I remember the film correctly, he did end up going back to his time frame and just living through the rest of his life. And I want to say he broke the machine at the end, if I remember correctly.
He gets stuck
It
in the
sounds like
future.
a legitimate solution for him.
Yeah. It's like, forget this demon. No, there was as far as the film goes, and I've never read the book. I probably should at this point, but in the film, there's this like, dramatic thing where the time machine gets stolen and he has to get it back, so he's stranded there forever. But and then in Back to the Future, there's this, it's kind of an opposite philosophy in that film where because of choices made, it's having direct effects to the future / present for Marty.
Like when Marty McFly is holding the family photograph and he's seeing family members slowly disappear.
Exactly.
Right.
And the idea being he has to get his parents to meet at this dance so that he can basically not stop existing. But in that film, if you kind of look at it too, it's very heavy on choice.
Right.
And in fact, the lead character, one of the lead characters, Dr. Emmett Brown, was like, you only get one future, so make it a good one. And it's like you get to pick how your life plays out. And one of the things I think in the movies, because there's 3 of them, and I'm preaching to the choir here, I think a lot of people know this, but in those movies, the persistent theme that does come up is that while there is choice, there's also this repetition of history kind of repeating itself over and over and over again, which once again, now that we've all been alive for a while, I think we can kind of see some of that too. Like, wow, that happened before. So that's honestly like why time travel sticks out to me so powerfully, is because what one of us doesn't have a thing happen where we're like, man, if that never happened, I wouldn't be here right now, and in good and bad.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I kind of wanted to put it out to you guys. What's some of your favorite?
Well, kind of in that line there, Eddie, you know, and it's kind of funny. I think that's true for all of us that, you know, one slight decision or, you know, flip of the coin that went slightly different, maybe none of us would be here. Right. You know, I recently, I lost my grandpa recently, but thankfully a few months back I did like an interview for him to ask him some cool questions about his life. Discovered one thing about him that I never knew, which was, you know, he almost went into the military, but he didn't. He got denied because of a hernia.
Oh, wow.
And had he gone off to the war in Korea, you know, perhaps he never would have started his family, hence my mom wouldn't have been born, hence I wouldn't be here. And so it's kind of this weird cause and effect. And yeah, I don't know. I've always been fascinated with time travel as well. Back to the Future is kind of always the mainstay in terms of,
isn't it though?
In terms of pop culture. Of course, there was a recent, and hopefully I'm not stepping on your toes here because I'm not sure what the other one you have in mind is, but there was a more recent movie. I think it came out in perhaps 2016. It was called Interstellar, and Matthew McConaughey's in it, and you know, long story short, without giving any spoilers,
it's been a while.
It's been a while. Okay, spoiler then.
Spoil away.
Well, he goes into outer space and basically slips into a wormhole, and he travels forward in time. And I think even beyond that, they stop on a planet, and you know, a half an hour goes by on this planet, but that you know, time's going much slower for him because they're moving close to the speed of light. And so back here on Earth, there's decades that go by. Yeah. And so anyhow, so by the time that he gets done with his adventure in space and goes back home, his daughter she's like 80 years old, but he gets home in time to say goodbye to her, and it's really emotional, really heavy. But you know, you ask a lot of science minded people, and it's been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that we can technically travel forward in time. We just can't travel back in time. Yeah, you can travel forward in time essentially by going faster. The closer you get to the speed of light, which is 186,000 miles per second, the closer you get to that speed, the tic-tac speed, the slower time goes for you. Yeah. While it's going normally back here for everybody on Earth. So in that respect, and they've done multiple tests on this. They've taken a really accurate kind of atomic clock type of deal, and they flew it up in a space shuttle, which is going nowhere near the speed of light, but still fast enough that there's a minute difference on that clock. And we're probably talking about like 1/100th of a thousandth of a second. But, but it still was slightly off compared to the clocks on Earth. And when they landed, they compared them, and they're like, wow, yeah, that's time is relative, just like Einstein always said.
That's crazy. I love it.
I guess my vote would be for, this is a film that came out in 1980, and it's kind of the geek or the techie in me coming out. It's a film called The Final Countdown. It's actually it's set in World War II or just before Pearl Harbor, and it starts in present day, and then they go through this magnetic storm that brings them back to 1941, I guess, when World War II began and Pearl Harbor was attacked. So you have modern day aircraft carrier and fleet with F-15 fighter jets, and they're going up against the Japanese fleet with prop plane Zeros, and so they have to make the decision. They realize that they've gone back in time through the storm, and they have to make the decision: do we involve ourselves in this? Because there's no way the Japanese fleet is going to be able to compete with this American present day, ship. Right. And so they have to decide: do we get ourselves involved in this, or do we just stay out of it? Because we could change the course of time. And so the whole movie is kind of them going back and forth about, should we or shouldn't we? And I think ultimately, spoiler alert, they decide to get involved. And just as they're about to get involved, the storm comes back again. And so they end up recalling their planes back to the ship, and they go through the vortex again and return back home.
Oh, wow.
But there are a few people who actually decide to stay back in time, and then they kind of it's almost kind of a Biff thing. They kind of use their knowledge of historical events
to nudge things along,
to nudge their lives and careers ahead. And but they do it in a good way. They're the good guys, and so they kind of meet up with them at the end, and so it's kind of a interesting ending to it. But
there's no Hell Valley.
No.
Well, and then Back to the Future, Biff, he had like a sports almanac.
It was an
from the
almanac.
He
future.
was going to make
Right.
all kinds of money,
Yeah.
and these guys did make money, because they show up at the docks
Yeah.
when they're coming off the ship, and they're in a limousine, and
Well, why wouldn't I? I mean, at that point, I mean, come on.
the lady's excited to see her dog again because she stayed in the past. The dog went ahead on the ship into the future, and then she met up with him again. So she's like an old lady now, but here comes Charlie the dog, and she's happy to see him
That
again.
is so awesome. This was in 1980?
1980.
Oh, wow.
It was Martin Sheen was in it.
Oh.
And I couldn't tell you some of the other actors, but yeah, it was a very cool movie. When you see there were some scenes where F-15s were going up against Japanese Zeros. It just wasn't even a contest. It was kind of fun to watch.
Once again, the thing about time travel I love is it gets these, even if they're just for fun, but it gets these great conversations going. Actually, you didn't step on my toes at all.
What's the other movie you were going to mention?
The one I was going to mention that really was a huge one for me was because much like you, Andy, and I mean all of us out there have lost somebody on some level, but like my mom died when I was a teenager, and this movie is called Frequency.
Oh,
and
yeah. It's a good one.
Dennis Quaid is a fireman, and he ends up later on dying, and he has a son, and then it goes forward in time and shows his son as a grown man, and he's messing around with his dad's ham radio, and then it basically, I mean, the long story short is he ends up somehow, and there's a storm, that somehow bridges the present and the past, and he's able to use this ham radio, the same ham radio in two different time periods, and communicate with his deceased father, not his ghost, but him in the early 80s or late 70s as to now. And once again, just being able to talk to somebody who you never had a chance to have those kinds of conversations with, just once again opens up this great fantasy in your head, or also just, it's just catharsis alone, but it was kind of a neat take on the time travel. Nobody was actually traveling, just their voices, and very cool idea, and just a fun
Great
time
movie.
travel. Loved it.
Fantastic movie.
Loved it. And then on a silly note, there's a lot of time travel is just ripe for storytelling. And there's a comedy out there, and it's Jack Black, who we know kind of spans the spectrum of whether it's family friendly or it becomes a little more blue. This is probably on the more blue spectrum of things, but he had a web short called Time Fixers, where him and his bandmate, because he's in a band, they go back in time to set the timeline right, and it's Michael Keaton who is their a handler, so he calls them on their wristwatches and is like, guys, you got to go back in time and fix the timeline again. Somebody screwed it up. And so they have to go back, and it's ridiculous, little scenarios where they have to go back and do something in time to put it back the way it's supposed to go. So warning, it's totally for adults only. So.
Well, I think, it's an appropriate topic for the pop culture and the paranormal segment, though. I think, in general, most people are fascinated with this subject simply because I think there's always something that we wish we could go back in time and fix, whether it's a major world event, or just something personal, like making a different decision in the past.
Right.
And then on the flip side, going into the future, I think is fascinating just simply because we're all curious. What will the world look like in 50 years? What will the world look like in 500 years?
Right.
And could you imagine? I mean, I'm just spitballing here, but can you imagine if you took somebody from the 1700s and magically transported them to modern day America with our technology? They would have absolutely no clue how to exist, because everything that we do involves technology that would be magic to them back then.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So similarly, you take us, and if we could travel, 300 years into the future, similarly, we would be absolutely lost. We wouldn't even know where to start. We wouldn't know what their gadgets and gizmos are. Nothing would be familiar. We wouldn't even have a reference point.
Yeah, provided we don't do the time machine thing and devolve.
Which
So
we
you
might.
live in caves. That's nice.
That's nice.
So if you got a favorite time machine movie, hit us up at Facebook, Paranormal Dads, and let us know. Let us know what you think.
Totally.
And now it's time for the main mystery.
Thanks for sticking with us through the main mystery. And there was a lot of debate going on in my head as to what topic I wanted to choose for this. And the one that won is crop circles.
Crop circles.
Circles of crops.
Oh, God, we're going to start doing jingles as a side hobby.
Crop circles. Crop circles. All right.
Like a barbershop quartet.
Well, like we said, it's winter where we live, and the snow is kind of melting off a little bit. And if you own a dog, like I said, you may find crop circles in your backyard.
Wah, wah, wah. But I think everyone knows what crop circles are. But basically, you have a field of wheat, a field of barley, maybe a field of corn. I'm not sure if they're carved into corn. But anyway, certain stalks are bent over, and so seen from above, they form into certain patterns. Now, the ones dating back hundreds of years ago were pretty simple, and like anything else, they became more complicated with time.
Yeah.
That's how life works. But back in 1678, there was the equivalent of a newspaper pamphlet with a black and white image, and it basically looked like a devil-type figure with a sickle or a blade that was carving a crop circle into a field. And the image became known as the mowing devil image. Pretty straightforward.
Yes.
They didn't really get elaborate with their titles there.
It's going to be on the cover of the next Black Sabbath album.
There you go. But anyway, inside of crop circles, people have reported a lot of strange phenomena. They're feeling nauseated, sick to their stomach. New Age people and psychics and sensitives have claimed that inside the crop circles it just feels strange. People feel dizzy. The energy seems to be charged. The air seems to be, thicker or just feels different. A lot of people have reported using fancy equipment.
Fancy equipment like glow sticks.
Get it, Eddie, get it.
Crop circle ray.
I bet you somebody has had a rave in a crop circle before. I guarantee it.
You absolutely know that there's been like a late night, like, guys, there's a crop circle in Old Man McGuffin's field. Let's go do a rave.
Go do it.
And if your sticks aren't glowing when you get there, they will after you're there for a while, because there's high levels of radiation that are often reported inside of these things.
Nice glow sticks. Those are my fingers.
But Geiger counters and other equipment indicate not only a high level of radiation, but a lot of magnetism. In fact, some of the soil samples that were taken out of crop circles are highly magnetized.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of different conspiracies and theories, and although it has been proven that crop circles, simple ones anyway, can be made with human beings and some rope and some wood planks, that does not describe the more intricate ones. And some people claim that it's extraterrestrial in nature.
Yeah.
UFO hovers above Farmer John's field and, carves in the Fibonacci sequence or some strange algorithm or geometric design. And, but, kind of like I was thinking, just because humans can duplicate or replicate a phenomena doesn't mean that some of the other ones aren't genuine. Example comes to mind, we all know lightning is real because we see it in the sky. Well, man can also duplicate or replicate, artificial lightning in a scientific laboratory with a Tesla coil.
You're right.
So although some of the crop circles may be hoaxed by man, some of them may be otherworldly, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, I mean, just being able to replicate or fake it doesn't mean that the other thing isn't real.
True.
I can make fart noises with my mouth.
And that doesn't mean the kind that come out the other end aren't deadly too, right?
Exactly. I just brought this down a notch. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that went south real quick.
Literally.
Eddie's catering to the lowest common denominator.
That's me.
God. Another weird phenomena that's seen inside of crop circles, oftentimes from helicopters or airplanes. I was going to say heliplane. Is that a thing?
Heliplanes?
It is now.
Sure,
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a
planecopter.
Get in the planecopter.
Those people who be up high and look down. One thing that's often caught on video is balls of light that kind of fly in and out of crop circles after they've been formed. Some of these balls are the size of a soccer ball. Others are the size of a golf ball. Nobody knows what they are or how they're linked to the phenomena, but it happens so often that it's leaving some people kind of scratching their head.
That's something else. I mean, seeing these things in your field and then the next day seeing, like you said, the Fibonacci sequence. And these things usually aren't just gibberish. I mean, some of them are intricate designs, but some of these actually have some sort of mathematical like significance, right?
Yeah, in fact, in 1974, there was a huge astronomical undertaking. Carl Sagan, a well-known astronomer, he and a bunch of his colleagues, they basically put together a treasure trove of artifacts that are important to humanity, and their point was to put it on a spacecraft and fly it out as far as it could possibly go. And actually, just as of a year or two ago, it finally got outside of our solar system.
Yeah, it broke through the last bit of our solar system.
Right. And on board this thing is a disc that contains some classical music. It has audio recordings of, I believe it's "Hello" or "I love you" in every single language on Earth. There's a picture of a female and a male in naked human form. There's even genetic sequencing and pictures of the double helix. And there's even a kind of a star map as to where our planet is located in the cosmos. So they send this out almost as like a care package, broadcasting this to aliens all over the universe. And anyway, my point is that one of these, and I think it was in 2001, we heard what could be a response. So a crop circle, huge crop circle into the grain there. It was basically that exact same stockpile of images sent back to us, but instead of the human forms, it was replaced with an alien form, and instead of our genetic sequence, it was replaced with a genetic sequence of unknown origin, aka extraterrestrial.
That is crazy.
So it's almost like they took our information that we sent out, slightly changed it, and sent it right back to us. Well,
Yeah.
that's the theory anyway. Of course, skeptics will say that it's just a hoaxer, but
because you can fake actual DNA by stomping on a board in a field. I mean, me and Pat do that all the time.
well, and there's the majority of crop circles are in Europe, specifically England. A lot are appearing around kind of famous sites like Stonehenge. But a lot of people say, the believers at least will say that some of them are so intricate. You're talking hundreds of circles
Yeah.
within circles, triangles within other patterns. It's almost like very intricate symbols. So much, it makes you wonder if humans could even pull this off in a night, let alone 45 minutes. Which is
Right.
there was a case of a pilot and another passenger on board. This was in England, and they were flying over a field, and they both reported that there was nothing unusual happening, and that was at 5:30 in the evening. Well, come 6:15, they flew back the other direction, and just in that time, a big elaborate crop circle had formed, and it makes you wonder, nobody could have pulled that off in 45 minutes.
And it's not something that always happens at night either. Sometimes it's happened in broad daylight. So it's not like you wait till it gets dark, we go out, we make our big circles, and then we leave. It's happening in the middle of the day as well in some places.
And even if it did happen at night, you would think if it was humans with boards and planks and rope, it would be even harder to do at nighttime.
Yeah.
You would lose track of where you're at in the pattern.
Be walking around there with your glow sticks trying to see where you're
There's a rave going on, and I'm trying to do this.
double glow sticks.
Come the first light of dawn, you look at your finished product from a helicopter, and you're like, well, it looks like a preschooler's art project. Yeah,
Looks like a gosh darn amoeba.
line's got a little crooked there, Gary.
Yeah. Sorry.
All I know is that if I was out there trying to create something like this, there's no way I could get those lines straight. I mean, it's hard enough walking a straight line, let alone doing some of these intricate designs that they've got.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, try to walk a straight line and not vary at all. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, just look at that.
Well, try leaving an English pub at 1 a.m. I guarantee they're not walking a straight line.
Looks like Jeffy from Family Circus, just all over the place.
Right.
And a common misconception is that when these are done, that the the wheat and the grain and the barley, that they're ruined. They're in fact not ruined. The legit crop circles, the stalks are bent over at the base, but they're not broken. And so the product is intact, and farmers can still harvest it, which is good for them. But when you really, put a microscope under it and they do some scientific testing in labs, what they're discovering is it's not just a pretty picture carved into a field. These stalks are changed at the cellular level. Not only are they exposed to high levels of radiation, but high levels of heat. Furthermore, there's some other interesting tidbits. A lot of small animals and insects are found dead in and near the site of crop circles, again, which leads you to think maybe there was a high blast of heat or a high blast of radiation that formed that image into the field. For example, there's flies that are still clinging to the stalks of wheat. And if it was just a human out there with a board and a piece of wood that was flattening these areas,
they'd fly away.
They'd fly away. The flies would fly away. They're flies, but they're not idiots,
Yeah.
There was even a report of I think it's a herd of elk.
Yeah.
Is that a herd of elk?
I believe it's a herd.
A gaggle,
Sure.
a flock,
A murder.
a pack. Anyway, there was 100 of them, of these elk, and they were all mysteriously found dead at the same place, just a stone's throw away from a crop circle. And when they did a little further testing, it was not due to disease or illness or virus or bacteria. It was completely unknown as to why they all passed away, and some people are linking it to that crop circle.
That's crazy. I mean, you have dead animals now. And it's not like guys who are faking that are going around, hey, man, we got to make sure we kill these 100 elk with this hammer. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
We'll just lay them out and do our circle, and boy, that'll get a rise out of them.
You got some poor guy they hired to kill the flies. Make sure that fly is dead and still attached to the grass. Pete. Gosh darn it.
Darn it, Pete. Another funny thing
he's
is
smothering flies with a tiny little handkerchief.
He's out there with super glue gluing all the flies.
Oh, gosh.
Sorry.
And did you guys know that crop circles, each individual one is named almost like they name hurricanes?
Really?
Yeah, there's one was called the Julia set in 1996 near Stonehenge. There was another one in 2012 that they called the Galaxy. So apparently they get names. Now that one, the Galaxy one, was 1,500 feet.
My goodness.
So, I mean, you're talking 5 football fields large here. And that one consisted of 400 perfect circles. And that one even was studied by some skeptics that don't believe in crop circles, and even some of those people were completely scratching their heads, saying that in the amount of time that was created, apparently it wasn't there, and then suddenly it was there,
and it's huge,
and it was enormous. So basically, what they said is to create something that elaborate, they would have had to create a new circle every 30 seconds, and that's not even counting time for surveying or setting up.
Yeah.
So it's basically
raw.
it's physically impossible.
Right.
Yeah.
And how big are each of these circles?
They vary, but some of them span 70 feet.
In 30 seconds.
Yeah, 30 seconds. It's impossible. You couldn't do it, even with an army of people.
I'm going to name this crop circle Ernie.
Ernie of the crop circle.
Now, wasn't there a pair of guys in England that claimed that they were responsible for the whole crop circle
man,
phenomenon?
it's us.
You have the best English accent, man. Good old Dave and Doug from England.
Dave and Doug from England.
I think it was in the 80s that they came out claiming that, crop circles are a hoax. We've been doing them for decades, and they even demonstrated how they did it. Which is basically just attaching a plank of wood to a rope and using your foot to stomp down on the plank as you hold it, taut against your foot. And it's a pretty effective method, but slow. You're going one step at a time. And so while they took credit for, X amount of crop circles in and around England, that doesn't account for ones that have formed in Asia, Australia, Africa, South America, pretty much every continent in the world, barring Antarctica. Maybe they do them in snow there. I don't know.
It's all Dave and Doug.
It's kind of like that old toy from like the 70s or 80s, the little romper stompers where they were like little buckets you put on your feet, and you had the little string and you held it up and you walk around, clomp around. Let's go out and make some crop circles with our romper stompers.
Some Daves and Dougs.
Dave and
Oh
Doug.
gosh, man! I would not give my daughter Sky one of those for anything. Her coordination is dicey at best. Now she's only 3 years old, but right before we started recording this particular episode, my wife texted me and said Sky fell down the stairs. And I replied back, "What do you mean, like a couple stairs?" She said, "No, the whole staircase,
Whole flight.
end over end, just toppled down like a physical comedy." And she's okay though. She's all right.
Oh, good.
A couple scrapes, she'll pull through.
A falling sky.
Oh, that's
Falling sky.
Sorry.
I'm a bad dad for laughing at that, but.
But two guys couldn't be responsible for this because these things have appeared all over the world. And
Right.
unless these guys are gold card members for United Airlines,
Doug's
it's
a
still going to
pilot.
be pretty expensive for a practical joke.
There's that, and I mean, I remember this whole thing, and man, your lightning example is like crystalline perfect. Like you can't, just because something can be recreated doesn't mean the original is fake.
Right.
And the thing that gets me too is that when they were demonstrating how they do it, they were doing simple little patterns.
Yeah.
They weren't stomping DNA into the field.
No.
Unless Doug spit off to the side. Dude.
No, and some of them are faces, some of them are words. There's some are written in cursive with loops, and it's almost like handwriting out there.
Yeah.
I mean, you might be able to do a couple right angles and a couple circles, but beyond that, I mean, I'm just not sure. And funny you mentioned the airlines. The other thing to take into consideration is these original crop circles, 1600s and even before, there was no high-flying air. There wasn't any aircraft, period, at that time.
Right.
So if these images, these crop circles can only be seen from up above, if nobody was up above looking at them, what's the point in making them?
Right.
There'd be no point.
They're being made for someone to see
Right.
up
Right.
high.
Kind of like the Nazca lines in Peru.
Exactly.
But again, those were made hundreds of years ago before aircraft, so who were the people in Peru making them for?
Right.
And the symmetry on those is insane.
Yeah.
The people scraping it into the ground. I mean, you'd almost need someone looking at it from the top to guide that whole thing.
Right. And didn't you say that one of those Nazca lines in Peru, those things are ancient. Didn't somebody recently mess one up a little bit?
I forget.
Some tourist or
I
something?
forget the exact company who did it, and I don't want to blame someone out of hand. But there was I remember now. It was a documentary.
Oh.
There was a documentary being made about maybe the Nazca lines in specific, or just they were in that area, and one of the people in a vehicle ran over one of them and caused a little bit of a kerfuffle with the with the government there that was protecting that over. So
The first camera film crew went blazing across in their John Deere tractor and messed up the
It was
Nazca
Caleb,
lines.
the intern,
Yeah,
on his first
exactly.
day,
hey guys,
fresh out of college. Oopsie daisy, messed up 1,000-year-old, petroglyph in the desert floor.
He was
I mean,
going for lunch.
It's like those comedic bits when you see like the priceless artifact and it gets dropped on the ground and just turns into powder, and you're like, good job, Caleb. You're fired.
The thing about crop circles, I swear if I could, maybe this should have been in the holiday gift guide section episode or two ago, but there's got to be some coffee table crop circle books out there just filled with beautiful pictures and images.
man.
It's just so cool to look at some of the pictures of these, and maybe we can include a link to a website in the show notes there. But you could just stare at these things for hours, and it just leaves you with your mouth hanging open and scratching your head wondering, how in the world could a human make that?
Right.
And if a human didn't make that, who did?
Yeah. Holy crop.
Well, I suppose this brings us full circle to the end of the episode. Sorry, I just had to. Sorry, that was a cheesy joke.
That was
Swiss
good.
cheese, full of holes.
That was
circles.
well done.
But we do want to thank everybody for listening to Paranormal Dads. We appreciate everybody who has chimed in on the Facebook page and on Twitter. Like I said, you can find us on Facebook at Paranormal Dads, or on Twitter at Paranormal Dads. If you feel so inclined, when you subscribe to our podcast, be sure to leave us a review. Give us any suggestions for show content. We appreciate that. Reviews always help.
Or if you know somebody who has an interesting story to share, this year in 2018, we're going to start having some guests on the show who have seen some pretty odd, odd situations and odd phenomena, and we're going to have them on to share their story, whether it's seeing a ghost or an unknown creature or a weird light in the sky.
And also a special shout out to Tony Ferguson for the image, our logo overhaul and refresh. So check that out too on our Facebook page and Twitter as well. And it should be the logo that you see when you subscribe to our podcast through either Stitcher or the podcast app on iTunes.
And thanks to the guys at freesound.org for providing us with a lot of the sound effects and music for today. And as always, get a hold of us. And more than anything, just thanks for listening, because we wouldn't be doing this show if we didn't have a loyal following. And we very much enjoy creating these for you.
Everybody, have a good day.
That's a wrap.
See ya. Main mystery. Ooh.
Wick.
Okay, we are rolling.
Here we go with the main mystery. Sorry.
Yeah,
You just see blood running down my ear.
Sorry.
You're
fine. Talk like that back here.
You're
why
fine.
are we so hot all of a sudden?
Man, we are good looking dudes.
We are.
We're so hot.
We're so
Too hot.